thank you. I always start my talks just by asking the audience, who here is an SEO? Oh, and I don't usually get as many hands as that, so that's good. It just helps me make sure I remember to clarify my lingo, SERPs being a very important one of them. So I'm going to talk about how search is changing. I'm going to talk about how Google's developing that change with the advent of SERP features. And by SERP features, or by SERPs, I mean, already clarified by Joe, the search engine results pages. And by SERP features, I mean all this kind of curated content that we see on the SERPs that's not the traditional organic 1 to 10 positions and paid listings. So all the other stuff that we see, that we interact with on our SERPs, by now we're like super used to seeing as well, right? And then the other thing I want to say is that I'm going to talk about branded keywords in this context as well, because this is an area of SEO which we've kind of quite often gets forgotten about. We rest on our laurels for, and actually with the invention of these, or the advent of these kind of SERP features, we're now having to compete for in a multitude of different ways, or they're not the safe ground that they used to be. So I'm really keen that they don't get forgotten about. So before I get into it, I just want to talk about why this is happening. What is Google trying to achieve with these SERP features? If everything bad you can say about Google, they're very, 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 very good. Is anyone here from Google? I'm going to remain mostly impartial today, or I'm going to try to. They're really, really, really good at relentlessly focusing on user experience. And what's happening now is we're asking Google a whole bunch of different questions. We want to find out information from the internet. What's happened is, preempting us, Google has gone out to every single page on the internet, understood what's there, and how that's contextually relevant to each individual piece of thing that we want to do, to the point where it can recommend the top 10 pages to go and source that information relevant to what it is that we're trying to achieve, or what intent we have. As it moves further down this road of getting us to this information as quickly as possible, it's inevitably come to the realization that, well, I've already been to all these places, and it's a little bit arbitrary to give you a choice of 10 pages to go over and get the information that you want, because I've been there to all those places and I know what the answer is, and especially when those answers are, or when that information is objective, and there's only one answer. It's much quicker for Google to just tell us what the answer is, right? So if we want to know how to boil an egg, there's really only one way to do that, and it's much more convenient for us to find that out at the point of search rather than needing to go to another page to find that out. That's a bit of a long-winded way of saying what's happening right now. But what that means is that Google's moving away from being a search engine, and it's moving into being an answer engine and a discovery engine. And I'll talk about what this means. Before we talk about branded search. I just want to do a kind of very high volume search together, what we call a head term, which is high volume, low intent search, something that we're all familiar with searching, and we'll just look at the SERPs now. But before we do, I just want to agree with you what the intent behind that search is. So when we look at the SERP, we can see how Google's meeting that intent or servicing that intent specifically with its SERP features as opposed to the listings. So it's not rocket science. I had a guess at what I think you might be trying to do when you search SEO, the keyword SEO. I'm guessing that predominantly what we're trying to do is find out what the acronym is. Yeah. Well, and if you're not trying to do that, you're probably just trying to find out what it is. You're trying to get a definition of it, right? And then after that, there's a whole bunch of other long tail stuff. You might want to find out where you can buy it, or some tips on how to do it, or like all these other long tail intent behind what is probably you just want to know what it stands for. If I show you the SERP now, what I've done at this point is taken out the organic listings and the paid listings. We're just looking at the SERP features. That's not awesome clarity there, but if I click over, you can see I've noded out how each of these SERP features meet what I think of what I guess are the intents. So at the very, very top of the page, it's answering the question of what does it stand for. Also, really, really high up on the page, it's answering what it does, how you can do it, and then further on down, it's giving you some news about it, where you can buy it, and all these other. So it's being an answer engine, and then it's also driving you to more nuanced searches and helping you discover more about what it is that you're what you're trying to achieve, right? So this is it being an answer engine and a discovery engine. And then if I put the organic and the paid listings back in, you can see that in a kind of bigger context. If I block those out, you can see that above the fold on your desktop or a whole bunch of scrolls on your mobile, we're not even seeing those organic listings come in. It's very, very, very much predominantly an answer engine. And when I color those in, you can see that most of the real estate is on this SERP is Google being an answer engine or a discovery engine and not a search engine. It already knows what you're trying to do, and it's very, very confident to give you that directly on the SERP as opposed to making you click and bounce and go looking for what it is you're trying to find. When I mean traditional SEO, I mean the 1 to 10 listings. But that's just one search. So really quickly before I talk about branded search, I just want to talk about the trends in the industry, and they are that essentially, you guys probably already feel this, right? That these features are appearing for most searches that you're seeing. The higher up the volume, the lower up the explicit intent, you're seeing that you're going to start to see a lot of these stuff, and then you're really only going to see none of these features appear when you're making really, really, really long tail in keywords searches. So this slide, most searches contain SERP features. This slide is the important one. This is the data from earlier this year from Rand, from Rand at XMoz. What he's telling us now is that most searches now don't result in a click to a website. So for the same amount of search volume as we've had previous years, we're now seeing less traffic going to a website. We're not seeing less searches. We're just seeing those searches being serviced with the content that's on the SERP and not needing to go to a web page. So that's a bit of a worry in SEO. Because we want to use SEO to drive traffic to our website. So we really need to understand where this is happening and why this is happening. And branded searches are one of the ways where this is having a really big impact.
What do you mean by organic? So can you define organic?
So when you search on Google, you're going to see a whole bunch of links on that SERP. You're going to see a whole bunch of links to external pages. You're going to see at the top 3 or 4 paid listings, the ones with the ads that we pay for in what we call PPC, and then down the bottom you're going to see 2 or 3 as well. Everything else is what we call an organic listing. It's what's been placed there based on merit at the judgment of Google. If that makes sense? It's everything that's not been paid to be on that SERP is an organic placement or organic listing. Usually we'd see 1 to 10 positions. Now we're seeing video carousels, answer boxes, knowledge panels, and all the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about now. Right, so branded keywords. I'll just clarify exactly what I mean by that. Not many people put their hands up when I said SEO. So a branded keyword is when somebody makes a search on a search engine, Google, and that search is specifically about your business. And then usually that's because they've included the name of your business, but also like the name of your product or a name of your staff member or something. And I'm going to give you a couple of clarifications, a couple of categorizations for those keywords now, because these are the ones I'm going to talk about. So when a generic branded search is when someone searches just for your business. The marketing meetup is a generic branded keyword. And then a navigational keyword, I'm kind of lumping those together. So it's when somebody searches for a kind of core business related piece of information. So if they want a really good example is the normal one is your contact number or how to contact you, your name, address, or your phone number, or it could be to signal that they're looking for Google to help them navigate to a deeper page on your website other than the homepage. So it could be a product page or a commercial landing page, but usually what we're talking about is a login page or a claim page or an about us page, or very, very often you see job pages as well. And then after that, the other group of branded keywords I'm going to talk about is the long tail, miscellaneous other informational keywords. So the times when people are asking your customers or your potential customers are asking you questions about your products. So in this case, they're asking Samsung, hey, my phone keeps overheating. What can you tell me about that? Is it a worry? What can I do about it? All these kind of informational keywords where they're trying to speak specifically to you. And I'm going to talk more about this, so don't worry too much about it. What I do want to be clear about is what I'm not talking about in branded keywords is when you might expect you might not expect your website to be the highest ranking page for that keyword. So if you search by men's Vans shoes now, you might not expect the Vans website to rank highest. You might expect cheapskateboardshoes.co.uk to rank highest, or Route 1 or Amazon or something. There's competition in that keyword. And then also the times when people are mentioning you but not talking directly to you. So they may want some impartial advice or a recommendation or a comparison or something like this. This is a big one for financial terms. When you express via your keyword that you want to buy insurance, but really what you're wanting is go compare, or for some website to tell you what insurance you need. Okay, so when somebody wants a very simple piece of information for your website, as I say, commonly, very, very commonly, it's your telephone number or some way to contact you. What's happening is they're going to see a whole bunch of features, which is giving them that directly from the SERP. And rarely now do we need to go through to the website to get some of this information. And that means probably the most important thing that I'm going to say now today on this matter is that your branded SERP is de facto your homepage in the most real sense I can possibly mean. Most of these branded navigational keywords related to this kind of stuff don't go to your website anymore. You could just click to call directly from the SERP. You can just get the opening hours now, or go through to the map to get directions straight from your phone. We're not really interested in going to the website to get this information anymore. And that means that if you're not considering your brand keywords and the SERPs that appear for those brand keywords as the beginning of your customer journey, you're missing out on more than half of your customer journeys, because most of that is not really going to your website anymore. So how this is working and the accuracy of this information is kind of like more important now than what it looks like on your website. That's really important. And then the other aspect, the other way that this is important for branded search is that now for these kind of informational terms or times when conversations are being started with you and your customers, with the advent of answer boxes and rich features at the top of the SERPs, there's opportunities for people to out-optimize you to control these spots. So if I explain that for an answer box, everybody knows what an answer box means. Is when you Google how do I boil an egg, and the bit at the top tells you how to do it, but without needing to go to the website. These answer boxes can be captured by really anyone ranking on page 1 and even sometimes on page 2. You don't need to be the brand that optimizes for that answer box. You just need to be in a fighting chance amongst those websites on the page 1. A whole bunch of reasons, but I'm not going to talk about how to optimize for them today. But it means that when you would assume as the brand in the keyword that you're ranking highly in organic positions 1, 2, or 3, there's an answer box which de facto always comes higher than position 1. We call it position 0. So you're being out-optimized based on just good content, concise, well-structured content, as opposed to being the brand that's being spoken about in the keyword. And this means that we're competing for our branded keywords now, depending on how many keywords you've gotten. You know, the importance of this will waver, but in lots of cases, this is a very, very meaningful thing where your competitors are. I mean, we do this in SEO. We look for our competitors' answer boxes, and then we optimize for them. This is what we do now, in a very, very meaningful way. So, going back to the navigational keywords, I want to talk about when we're getting less traffic, and when is that okay, right? We don't, or reluctantly, when we're okay with that? We don't have a choice. Google is doing this, without our blessing. But how do we understand this, and when is this okay to get less traffic for our keywords? So this is a navigational summary, which is a standard thing you can take from GA, but this is a very specific case where the website in question, the web page in question receives only generic branded keywords, and no non-branded keywords or navigational keywords. It's just generic branded keywords. And what's happening is that 20% of those people that are landing on that page are then clicking onto the Contact Us page. and then about 20% of those visits are also clicking the next two rows are clicking through to commercial pages, and then after that, like a whole bunch of other non-commercial pages. And what that kind of tells us is that most of our generic branded traffic is not trying to buy something at that point. It's trying to find out where we are, or trying to find out what jobs we've got going, or trying to find out a bit more about us. It's not commercial traffic in an immediate sense. They're not trying to buy something right now. They might be just trying to do something, all of the other things they might be trying to do related to your business. Right. So if we know what those keywords are, we know what those things that people are trying to do. We should be confident that regardless of why the traffic might be disappearing from our traffic reports, and also like the conversion rate might be dropping or changing because we're getting less traffic. What we shouldn't be seeing is a drop in our bottom line, the amount of sales we're making or the number of conversions, because those people are still needing to navigate to commercial pages and fulfill their commercial need. But what we do need to do is just understand where and why this is happening, and make sure that we're taking control of that and optimizing it. As I say, we don't have a choice. This is happening, but we can go along with the ride and be making sure we're making the most of it. So I talk about NAP, name, address, and phone number, because in SEO that's a really big thing for us. We focus on these core business details. There's a whole bunch of reasons in SEO why we focus a lot on them. But essentially, it's because lots of people are looking for those things. They're the common things people want to know. And when someone's searching for this kind of information, what they're seeing is your business profile, your Google My Business profile. I'm just going to take my jacket off because it's quite hot. And what you're going to see usually for this kind of stuff is a Google My Business profile, and usually also a map listing, depending on if you have multiple locations, I guess. And nowadays, it's built up. There's loads and loads and loads more function to this, and Google's trying to keep as many people as possible on their SERPs, so they're building out more functionality to this, and now we have this kind of microsite situation where you can add images and people can leave reviews, and all of this stuff is super important. And you should be absolutely be monitoring this and maintaining this as more importantly, or as importantly, as your own website. Never underestimate the amount of times that someone will search for your logo, for example. Okay, so I started to talk about it. The big issue that we have with this, the reason why this is a win-win for Google is because the more people they keep on their SERPs and funneling through to more and more refined SERPs is because they get to control the ads that we see, right, on those SERPs. That's why it's good for us, but it's also really, really good for them. At the cost of us losing footfall through our website. So while those non-commercial visits might not be resulting in sales at that time, there are people that we know. There are customers or our ex-customers or our potential customers, and we don't get to say welcome. And we don't get to say, based on what you bought last time, here's a really good offer, or here's a really good blog piece. We know that you like fishing. Here's our new blog piece about fishing, or here's a based on what you bought last time, here's this as well, right? We miss all this opportunity, which long term does have an effect on our bottom line, and that's what I'm being impartial. That's what Google's taking, and why in digital marketing we're a bit iffy about what's happening. The one thing that is in place now to start mitigating that, or there's a whole bunch of things, but a very, very important part of mitigating that is that we can now post directly onto our SERPs. So we have control over making those dynamic, and we can make these kind of social media posts. This is a post that I made last year now, but it's about a talk I did last year. I feel like I'm doing okay for time, so I just want to digress a little bit because there's a really good example that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. My son, my oldest son, he's like 3 years old, and we have an annual pass to the dinosaur park, right? So, and we go whenever we got some spare time. We just go to do the dinosaur walk and play in the soft play. And it was a Saturday afternoon, or Saturday morning, whenever it was, and I wanted to just double check what the opening times were for the next morning to make sure I didn't get there early. And And as I scrolled through to get the opening times on the SERP, I noticed, because they made a post, I noticed that they had a special dinosaur night walk that evening. And of course, that special dinosaur night walk wasn't covered in my my annual pass. So, I was upsold to this special event, and all because they had taken the time to take it. Yeah. He's not even old enough to read as well, so I could have just not told him, right? But no, it's very cool. But I got upsold because they'd taken the time to curate that SERP, and because they know that most people are going there to check the opening times over the weekend, they let us know the same way they would have had a banner. You would have had a banner or some kind of signposting text box on your website saying special event. They did that to their SERP, and because of that, they were able to upsell me to a whatever price ticket that that was on top of my annual pass, my annual season ticket. And this is really, really important stuff. This is how you mop up that long-term in-life communication. And then I'm going to skip a little. I'm going to go a little bit fast through this. But if your name and address in your telephone number isn't as relevant, if you're a big corporation or you're a website without a real-world address, or and you warrant having an entry in Google's knowledge graph, you're going to see a knowledge panel like this, which is basically Google curating everything that it knows that's related to the entity that is your business in this little panel, and usually you see them on the right-hand side. Yeah, on the right-hand side. And then, this is Google being a discovery engine. It's linking the entities of the company with the CEO, and then linking the entities of his books. Also, wonderfully vested interest in selling you the book, obviously. As a corporation, it's quite tricky, if you think about it, to understand what is all the stuff that Google knows about us and keeps within its database, and how many times have they got it wrong, or how many times is it not right, or how many times do when something changes, where do I go to keep that updated, right? So this is a big deal, and I guess somewhat in Google's defense, but essentially there's an API, so you can go to Google's knowledge graph and ask it the question. If we didn't have this function, it's an absolute minefield to try and audit all of your keywords, and you'd have to guess at all of your keywords and then scrape the SERP somehow and manually check what the content's inside. Anyway, it's almost impossible, right? And then the other way to do it would be to take a data dump of everything on Wikipedia to try and find out what it knows. It's basically an impossible job. But you can go to Google's Knowledge Graph API and just ask it, and it will give you a readout of everything that it knows that's a related entity to you as an entity or your company as an entity. And the URL's there, so you can just grab that from the slides. So this is the related entity that if you query the API for Microsoft, it will tell you that this is the related entity of a sister company. It's a games company called Xbox Game Studios, and this is the related entity of an event that we know that Microsoft organise. And then there you go. You can now go to Wikidata across all the different multiple pages and places in Wikipedia and keep all your information up to date, as well as obviously the information and the markup on your own website, which is arguably more important, or equally important. You now know everything that it knows, so you can go to those places and you can't necessarily censor it, but you can police it and you can work with it to make sure that it's as good as possible and up to date as possible. Yes, so that's branded and generic branded and navigational keywords, and then this is the messy situation that is long tail and informational keywords related to your company. So to put this forward, I felt like I needed to give you some keywords to look at the results for it. So I took Samsung. I took 25,000 of their branded informational keywords, and I'll give you an examples of those now. For transparency, those 25,000 keywords are about 1 million searches monthly. At this point, I'm only looking at English keywords, ranking data in the UK, and only on mobile. Otherwise, Samsung are not paying me to do this. Otherwise, it would have been possibly large, and I would have needed to charge them thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds. So these are the kinds of keywords that I'm looking at. They all have objective answers, and they're all related specifically to Samsung. So they're all people that are asking for objective questions directed at Samsung. So how do I take a screenshot? How do I block a number, etc., etc. No impartial or subjective answers required. You would expect Samsung, or in theory, Samsung could rank first or very highly for every single keyword if they applied themselves to making the content to answer these questions. As it happens, they don't rank fantastically. The bands here we're looking at is positions 1 to 3 on the first page of Google, and then positions 4 to 10 on the first page. The third band is keywords on page 2. The fourth is keywords on page 3 to 3 to 12, and then unranked. And we can see that most keywords are on page 1, but it's not first place for all of their own branded keywords, which is the first shock, right? They could definitely do something about that. Predominantly, we're seeing positions 3, 4, and 5 for those times when their customers are initiating a conversation with them. And what that means is 68% of keywords are on page 1, and they have an overall average rank of 7. But I need to caveat that, because what we're looking at is a really antiquated way of understanding how we rank keywords, because I'm just looking at those 1 to 10 positions on the first page of Google, and that's really meaningless without understanding how far down the page those 1 to 10 positions start when factoring in the answer boxes and the image carousels and the image thumbnails and all these other kind of stuff. And the people also answer sections. I've got the data for you. But importantly, an average rank, in this case, in this context, what I really mean is a base rank, which means that your average base rank is 7, but that changes to a true rank of an average true rank of 10 when you factor in all of the different SERP features that come above the first position, the first organic position. And when you take into account that across those 25,000 informational keywords, there's an average of 4 SERP features on every keyword. So what's happening is that they might have okay average rankings across positions 3, 4, and 5, if they're lucky in first position. But what we need to really understand is where they rank in those image carousels and those videos and answer boxes to understand truly how they're performing for their own keywords. And the answer is very, very embarrassing. And what I didn't preempt it to be as bad as this. Very, very embarrassing. Really, they're absolutely nowhere, entirely nowhere. So the green is the percent of which they, or the number of which that they occupy of their own SERP features, which is totally loopy to think that despite kind of okay average rankings for their own keywords, they're being out-optimized by people that rank around them to occupy those really, really, really important, predominant spots. As Google moves to being an answer engine, it's giving more weight to those SERP features above the organic listings. If you remember back to the screenshot of the SERP I showed you at the beginning. Again, this isn't. I'm not here to talk bad about Google, but the main competitor for those keywords is Google. It's those. So if I go back here, what we're seeing is that nearly all of those informational keywords are returning videos. This is really, really important way to deliver content to people now, and it's clearly being favoured by Google. It just so happens that they own a video platform. That was a savvy business decision. But so predominantly they're losing traffic to YouTube, and then as Google funnels people through this discovery engine of more and more and more refined SERPs, understanding more about what somebody wants and delivering it from that SERP, we're seeing just Google itself being a main competitor for those organic listings, or those external organic listings, links. Sorry. And then they're lucky that the long tail set of competitors aren't they're commercial competitors, but what they are is those informational publishers which are really invested in mopping up all that high volume traffic so they themselves can display advertise to it. And they're getting so good at ranking for these terms and so good at structuring their content to optimize for these answer boxes and these video and image carousels that they're just stealing all of the traffic from underneath Samsung, or stealing all of the conversations from out from under Samsung.
Jon,
Yes, it's not. It's
to pick up the traffic, and all they want to do is serve
Well, let me just check my slides. So if everyone's read that, basically, this is what I'm addressing. Is saying that that's why would they care? So some of the times those informational holders might prefer iPhones, right? Or have the wrong information, or have old images, or have slightly incorrect or biased views. You can't protect those subjective opinion if they're having people come to their house, they get to expose them to their opinions. So I mean, I don't know. Across 1 million global searches every single month, I think there's definitely importance of when somebody's trying to ask you a question, you being the one to answer that question. I think that's really meaningful. I think they are. I'd have to go right back to go to the example keywords, but it's people trying to troubleshoot issues with their phone. If I'd made that phone, I'd want to be the person that deals with them when they've got an issue with it, or when they need to know when the next phone, when they're trying to decide whether they want an iPhone or a Samsung because they need it next month when their contract runs out, but they don't know whether to wait. I don't know, all these different scenarios. I'd be the one to want to convince them to wait rather than get an iPhone. I think that's a valuable conversation that they could be having for the sake of optimization. Okay, yeah. So, in a nutshell, to the tune of 1 million monthly searches, I think they're conversations that they should be owning. Yeah. So what can we do to that? There isn't any cool, super awesome SEO secrets to this. We still focus on content. I hope I've made that clear already. But what is important is now we need to look at not just the keywords, but we need to understand what the SERPs look like for each of those keywords. How Google sees the most effective delivery of content or delivery of information based on each of those keywords. And to do that, we need a lot more data than just what the keyword is. We need to know all of these other things so we can optimize for what we call AEO, answer engine optimization, so we can optimize for every single tiny opportunity on that SERP, not just those 1 to 10s, but every single other opportunity as well. And it's a case of structuring our content effectively to optimize for these things, and using the right formats which deliver the content effectively. And big data is needed at this point to understand the whole landscape and the minute detail of each of these SERPs. I'm probably way over. I'm sorry, Joe. I've got one really, really quick thing to do before I go, which is give you one really, really good example. So, for this very good keyword, how do I stop my Samsung phone from overheating? This is the answer box, or it was at the time of writing, and it's a website called www.makeuseof.com. And this is the pathetic attempt at rank content that is on the Samsung website. So everybody here will agree that that's thin content, that it's very weak and uninformative or unauthoritative. The SEOs in the room will recognise that they've got 2 pages targeting the same keyword, which is a double whammy, double no-no. And this is the page that occupies the answer box. I could spend a few minutes talking about how wonderful that is, but it's very obvious why that ranks. And that's it. Thank you very much. Cool. That's it.